Hello and welcome to a look back and a look forward. I'm Jack Sheard. With me is George Ayoub, and today we're going to be looking back at the year of 2008 and all the news that happened and how it's going to affect 2009. George, I think we should start with what I think we both consider to be the top story of the year, the State Fair.
The move of the State Fair from Lincoln to Grand Island, yes.
And it is coming. There's a lot of decisions
this
past year.
I've heard that. I've heard that.
A lot of decisions in an election year. One decision I know a lot of people were unhappy because they didn't get a chance, they think, to have a say in is bringing the State Fair to Grand Island.
I think that's correct. And you know, one of the things that we have to remember here is that they do elect representatives who go to Lincoln, and so they do have a say in that regard. But you know, I think there were a lot of questions about how the fair ended up here and what was going to happen, and I think there are still questions. And so the fact that people wanted to vote seemed real natural to me. I didn't think they were ever going to get one. I read this morning in the paper that the final lawsuit, the state and the governor has asked a judge to throw that out. So I think for next year, I think the lawsuits will be over. I think people will begin to accept this. The big question on my mind is, can we pull this off in the next 18 months? There's a lot to be done at Fauna Park. As you know, they have to build buildings, and the State Fair actually has to move to open in August, late August of 2010.
It's really going to take the perfect season and a half, year and a half of construction. Mm-hmm. You know, when you look at some construction projects, you have to have perfect weather. And what they're trying to pull off, while it's going to be great when it's done, might be hard to finish in that 18-month period between now and State Fair 2010.
Are you telling me that Nebraska does not have perfect weather?
They have perfect Nebraska weather.
Oh, perfect, yeah. Exactly. And if we had a wet season like we did last year, in the spring and then again in the fall, I would be concerned about making that happen. I'm not saying it won't, but I think that making the deadlines happen will be the big issue for construction companies, the State Fair, everybody to make the move. Because frankly, Jack, if they're still building in the summer of 2010, I think we'll have a lot of nervous people around here.
One thing, if they get this completed in time, and I think this will be the big story of 2009 and probably 2010, is when will we start to see the economic development impact from bringing the fair here? We've talked, you know, this year there's been talk of new hotels coming along into town. Certainly the State Fair and Husker Harvest Days have been, you know, that draw. But there's things that'll be year-round. New events in this state-of-the-art, you know, ag facility.
Exactly. Yeah.
That'll be a big thing to see if the people bringing those events in are going to do a good job of bringing those events in.
Right, and that's the promise of this. Actually, the impact, the economic impact, started with the 1% food and beverage tax. That's not a positive way to look at that, but that is certainly what people were upset about. One of the things they were upset about. I think we have to look at, I think there'll be an enormous impact immediately just because we're going to bring thousands of people to Grand Island. But I think we have to look at it over maybe 5 years to see what the impact is and divide that out, as you say, between what happens during Fair Week and then what happens the rest of the year. And are we using these buildings properly? I mean, are there ways that we can, you know, generate more income? Are there ways that we can use them so Grand Island can just be an efficient place and you know, be the State Fair city and use these things year-round. So.
And people will come to Grand Island, and they will take roads. And one new road they will use when they're here in Grand Island was completely started over from scratch, dug up down to the dirt below it, and started again. And that's 2nd Street in downtown Grand Island, 2nd Street, the Highway 30 project. And personally, after going through there many times, it looks fantastic right now. It's not done yet.
No.
But they did a fantastic job.
I think so too.
It's going to have a big impact on that area.
I think so too. And you know, 2nd Street was in really bad shape. And I think that while there was a little grumbling at the beginning of this project, I think most people understood we really need to do this. We need to widen the street. It was a dangerous street when people turned. There are, you know, 18-wheelers that go through there regularly. It's a highway, as you said. So I think, you know, Grand Island was very patient with this. And you know, just driving on it is somewhat of a pleasure. And I also think that when this project is complete, it will attract businesses back to 2nd Street, just because of, you know, aesthetically, it's very pleasing. They'll get trees and green, you know, shrubs back in there. There's plans to do some things in the median along the way. I think it's going to be an economic boost, and I think people will, you know, see the benefits of almost a year of detours and you know, trying their patience on the first few days, but I think after that things worked out pretty well. And you know, props to the construction crews
Scott
who worked through
Grippenstraw and his group with the State Roads Department. That 2nd Street before was, well, there was a no turning area except for being the guy in front of me.
Right, exactly.
And then you would, to go around the guy that's turning in front of you a lot of times, if it rained or sprinkled the day before, you had to go through Lake 2nd Street to get through it. And now, with the way they've designed this road, there's no more drainage problems. There won't be standing water. And when you go to our fabulous library, you can get right to it.
Exactly.
So that's going to be a big, I think that's a big positive thing for Grand Island this year.
And if they can do it on 2nd Street, maybe they can do it on the State Fair.
They did have their problems with getting this done on time this year with some rain in May, which, that's probably the next thing we should talk about is the rain in May. That set them, they were ahead of schedule on 2nd Street until that happened. The late May, early June, 27,000 straight days of rain that filled my basement with water, and probably yours.
Mine too, right, and many other people in Grand Island. Yeah, groundwater issues were huge in Grand Island, and I think that looking forward to 2009, I think what's going to happen is if we get rains again that are enough to fill some basements, because the water table remains high. If we get rains to fill the basement, the question will come up again: what should be the city's response? And I think that the city is going to have to look at that as a setting policy, and they're going to have to look at that perhaps in what kind of guidelines for building and construction. We talked about this a little bit yesterday about I'm not in the floodplain, then why is my basement wet? And lots of people in Grand Island had that experience. But as I told you, if you remember, the name of our town is Grand Island. Obviously water is going to be an issue, and
well, it was certainly an issue for me when I had Lego men floating in the lake in the basement of my house. And you ask, well, what's the city supposed to do? Well, they're supposed to get the water out of my basement. That would have been my answer the day after it happened. But looking back, I can't see what the city could possibly have done for the thousands of people who had water rising in their basements, rooms ruined, carpet pulled out. What could the city have done? They didn't cause the rain. There's things, there's wells that can be put in place. They're hard to maintain. They're expensive. Who do you charge? Who gets? There's a complicated issue there. It's something people in Grand Island obviously need to see some return on. They need to see an answer for that, because rain will come. We've had 2 100-year storms in the last 5 years.
I think what complicates is we have a history of water pollution as well that we are still dealing with, and they've closed. They've had to shut down wells, and there are lawsuits out there, and so that all complicates the entire issue of water, which of course, living in the middle of an agriculture area is certainly, the wellspring of life, and it's certainly our economy. So, while we take it for granted, I think it's going to continue to be a big issue in 2009 and beyond.